basically it gave them a way to reprint like some really broken old cards in a less broken way.
Distraction makers.
All right, so we're going to continue our mechanics series, and we're going to talk about Suspend.
Yes. Did Suspend come out in Time Spiral or Future Sight?
Time Spiral.
Okay.
Yeah. The Time Spiral block is past, present, and future. So you had Time Spiral, you had Planar Chaos, which is present, and you had Future Sight, which is future.
Right.
And so the sort of gimmick, I guess, or I hate to say gimmick because I feel like it was very well designed. The theme for Time Spiral was sort of honoring the past. And you had the Suspend mechanic, which was it basically gave them a way to reprint like some really broken old cards in a less broken way, which is just genius.
What was the less broken way?
So Suspend, instead of playing the spell regularly, you pay its suspend cost, you remove it from the game with a certain number of time counters on it. Each upkeep, you remove a time counter. When it has 0 time counters, the spell goes on the stack and is cast. And so you had these old cards, like Ancestral Recall, which was totally busted, which is 1 blue to draw 3 cards. Became Ancestral Visions, which is 1 blue to suspend it for 4 turns, draw 3 cards. You had Black Lotus becomes Lotus Bloom, which is suspend 0, 3 turns you get a Black Lotus. And there's a bunch of these, which is super cool. It was a way to really honor Magic's history and also do it in a way that didn't completely destroy the game.
Right. And it sounds like it didn't completely destroy it, but it did cause...
It caused problems.
Some problems.
Well, sure, but I don't think those problems are necessarily Suspend's fault.
Right.
Other than they then later created stuff like Cascade that made it so that you could basically cast these spells for free. So any kind of effect that like lets you play a spell for free from your library can play these Suspend cards for 0 mana.
Yeah.
And that's just extremely powerful because what's more broken than an Ancestral Recall for 1 blue mana? An Ancestral Recall for 0.
I saw Suspend early on when I started getting back into Magic in the last couple of years when I made my Tiamat deck because there's I think there's a Suspend ramp like land search. And I had that in my collection. I didn't really want to buy a whole bunch of other cards, so I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, and I'm not familiar with Suspend. And instantly liked the mechanic a lot. What I think is really funny, though, is like Suspend to me feels like one of those mechanics that is so flavorfully fulfilling, especially for the set that it came out in.
Yes.
That it makes up for the clunkiness that comes along with it.
Yeah, it is. I think I described it before as a verbose mechanic because it does sort of multiple things. You have to pay a cost, and then it has a suspended number, and then every upkeep it also removes a counter from the card. It's a lot of busy work with Suspend.
It's very difficult to do, and a lot of people that maybe are used to digital card games or digital games in general probably don't. They take this for granted. Yeah. But it's very difficult to get away with a too much upkeep, and upkeep not being the upkeep phase, but upkeep being like you have to remember that this thing triggers and this thing triggers and this thing triggers. And Magic can have a lot of those. Suspend, I think, is easier to miss because it is not in play. If you have a creature and it gets something at upkeep, that is something that is going to benefit you immediately on that turn. Suspend, you just have to remember, like, oh, I got to put that counter on it. It doesn't do anything yet, but in 2 turns, you're screwed.
Yeah, a lot of the ways that you handle this in like a tournament setting is you'll place something on top of your library before it, so you won't draw your card for the turn. So you'll remind yourself, oh, I have something during my upkeep, because once you draw your card, you've effectively skipped past your upkeep and you've missed those triggers, and then your opponent gets to laugh at you because you don't get to remove any suspend counters.
Right.
But yeah, so one of the other sort of problems with these Suspend cards is that they're really bad to top deck later in the game, right? So early game, great. You know, you want to get them suspended early, and then you're sort of waiting for them to kick in.
Yeah.
But if you top deck one of these things, you know, turn 7, and you know you really needed something to save your ass, this ain't it.
Did they not make any modal ones where you can either pay less to suspend or pay more to do it now?
There are some, but they're not handled in the way that you're describing. There's one called Aeon Chronicler that you can suspend like X, it's like a certain cost and X to add suspend counters to it, because every time
Okay.
you remove a suspend counter, you get to draw a card, which is great, super cool.
Yeah.
But you can't really like pay more up front to suspend it for less.
I'm just thinking like, okay, you can either pay nothing and suspend this for 3 turns, or pay 2 mana and you play it right now.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
nothing like that?
Oh no. Yeah, there's cards that have suspend for less than I think Rift Bolt is one of them.
Okay.
That has, I think it costs 3. It's basically like a 3 mana, 3 damage red spell that then you can pay 1 to suspend for a 2 or 3 turns. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And it's effectively a lightning bolt.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, they do have that in that they're not all the way that I'm describing, where the cost the spell cost is 0. But we've seen this mechanic come up in new ways over time, in new and interesting ways. And I think a lot of it is to alleviate some of this weirdness with like, well, I top decked it and now I got to suspend it and wait forever. So I think the first sort of iteration on suspend, and these aren't like direct improvements necessarily, but they're sort of in the spirit of suspend. We have foretell, which was from Kaldheim. The difference there is that you foretell for, I think, 2 mana to exile it face down, and then on a later turn you can play it for its foretell cost.
Right.
So it's it's kind of like spell morph in that way.
Yeah.
Where morph would be a face down creature in play, and then you pay its morph cost to flip it face up. Here you're like exiling it face down, and then you're paying to flip it face up later, basically.
Right.
As a spell. But you could foretell a creature too. It's just a different board.
And you don't have to foretell it. You could just cast it normally. But normally it's a candy more candy approach.
Right.
In that you could play it normally, or if you foretell it, then you get a bonus. Right.
Yeah. I feel like they probably learned their lesson a little bit with suspend here, in that I don't think they made any cards that you can't cast normally. There's 0 mana value, but they only have foretell, right? So it would have been cool, but I think they were like, yeah, we can't do the the suspend thing again.
Right.
But yeah, foretell's a cool mechanic. I think it's pretty flavorful for the set that it's in. In terms of Viking, reading the runes, sort of like, foretelling the future. Viking mythology.
Yeah.
I could see it fitting in with Vikings. I could see it fitting in with Greek mythology.
I was gonna say like Theros. I could see that working as well. Yeah.
So that's a cool one. And then most recently, Plot is the new one that sort of is in the lineage of Suspend.
Plotting, luckily, has a changeable cost in the same way in our episode that we talked about Cascade versus Discover. And that Cascade was a set mana value based off of the card that you're playing that has Cascade, but Discover has an integer next to it that can change. They decided to have Plot has a cost that is interchangeable.
Plot is much more similar to Suspend.
Yes.
But it's only a single turn, right? So it's a little bit like...
No. Well, you could play it right away.
You have to wait at least 1 turn.
Right.
You can't play it. You can't plot it and then play it immediately.
Right.
And so it's interesting in terms of like, plot is like, okay, well, I'm going to play my card and exile it face up, so it's known information at that point. And then so your opponent knows that's coming on some kind of future turn, but they don't know when.
Yeah.
Where suspend, it's like they know it's coming and they know exactly when it's coming.
Yeah.
The other thing that was weird with Suspend is that creatures that had Suspend, when they came off of came in onto the stack from exile,
they had Haste.
They were given Haste.
Right.
And Mark Rosewater talked about this on his podcast and mentioned it a few times, I think, in that what would happen was players would just want to attack right away with it. They're like, I've been waiting. I don't want to wait another turn on top of it if it would have summoning sickness. So, boom, in play, they want to attack with it.
Do plotted cards come out with Haste?
Good question.
I don't know if they do.
Plot does not give the creature Haste.
Really?
Yeah. Aloe Alchemist is the one I'm looking at. It's just the first sort of plot card.
No,
on the list.
A creature via plot does not grant it. Okay.
Yeah. Which is interesting, right? Because, Mark Rosewater's reasoning here is that he saw sort of player intuition and leaned into it. And so we know that plot in that way is then fighting some amount of player intuition.
I think,
Less wait time, I guess.
I don't think so, because I think the intuition between players of Suspend is like, okay, I finally get to play the card on this turn, whereas Plot is this like prepared, like whenever I want, I get to put this out. But Suspend, I think because it's that set time period, I do wonder if people were just like, it's like an impatience thing where it's like, well, I had to wait this long.
Right.
I get the thing,
I'm
right?
waiting. Yeah. Where Plot, you're right. That's fair. That's fair. Like you go ahead and plot it, and then it's up to you when you want to play it.
Right.
Rather than you're waiting for the time counters to come off on Suspend. Yeah. That's a good point.
I also do wonder how much of this is, maybe some of this might change too, because I don't know how much testing is done digitally now too, in tandem with Magic Arena, because when I look at Plot on Magic Arena, it doesn't seem like I'm not able to cast that card like normally, because it's part of my hand but just off to the side.
Oh, interesting.
Whereas like as paper, I'm like, well, it's down there, you know, where it like may almost looks like it's already in play, but it's not in play.
Oh, that's interesting.
So,
that's a great point. I am curious about that.
Yeah.
Because if it's presented in Arena like as sort of an extension of your hand when it's plotted,
it doesn't feel as funky.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But I don't know. It's hard to say.
I mean, it's a really good user experience design point, at least.
Yeah.
In that the way that you're presenting information is going to be sort of interpreted differently by your player.
Right.
Huh. Yeah.
I don't know.
Weird.
It's possible.
I know that's like a weird thing that's been coming up lately, is that, I mean, the Modern Horizons 3 sort of launch video came out, and they were talking about how Arena and Magic Online has sort of affected some card designs.
Yeah.
In terms of them getting more feedback from Arena. It's a separate video probably, but anyway.
It's funny because thinking about Suspend would actually function way better,
Much better
on Magic Arena.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Magic Online was out at the time when Suspend was
Mm-hmm.
originally introduced, but it was not the powerhouse that Arena is.
And did Magic Online automatically add the Suspend counter for you?
Yeah, yeah. Or at least reminds you of the trigger.
Okay.
You know, it's funny because you end up with like almost a trade-off a little bit with playing Magic Online versus in paper. Is that in paper you can like forget your triggers. In Magic Online you can't, but you can misclick.
Okay. Yeah.
Where in like real life you're not gonna like, oh, I cast this kill spell on that guy when I meant that guy. Like that doesn't happen. But let's check Storm Scale for Suspend. I think that's interesting.
I think it's something to watch. It's hard to say because how they built around Suspend, I can see problems with it. But you can adjust the variable of suspension. It's not the same fixed rate of turns, so I feel like it'd be fairly low. It's high.
It is an 8.
Really? Just below?
You're just above Cascade.
Or just wait? How's the storm scale work? Because like
storm scale is 10.
Oh, the storm is 10?
Storm is 10.
Oh, my.
So
okay.
you went the wrong way.
I was going the opposite way.
No.
Oh,
okay. So you're.
So I would have probably.
Right yeah. Okay. Interestingly enough, over the history of the ability or of the mechanic, it has been anywhere from a 7 to a 9.
Wow.
Currently, MTG Wiki has it at an 8, which is updated fairly frequently in terms of basically it's updated as Mark Rosewater posts any kind of like blog update about this kind of stuff.
Okay.
I would assume it's because of the free spell issue.
Just enough things can trigger spells from your deck, casting them, avoiding the suspend
and
cost.
a lot of busy work, just
a lot of busy. Is that why though? Because that's not really what the storm scale represents, does it?
It's any kind of reason that they wouldn't want to reprint the mechanic.
Okay.
Could be busy work, could be power, could be, whatever.
Yeah. So a lot of busy work, a lot of power, but generally in the spirit of the mechanic, I think like very flavorful, very fun. I think most people that see Suspend like it. In general, I think it really I feel like it's like a game designery problem when you look at it.
Yeah.
Obviously, players can abuse the zero cost spells. Casual players won't see that as like a thing that you could do. But I think
it's very unintuitive though. So a casual player could have a Suspend card in their deck and cascade into it and not know what to do.
No, right.
Yeah.
But then I also think like players, a casual player that misses their Suspend counter, they're going to be like, oh, I forgot. Oh, I got to put that on there. And it's like not a big deal.
You remove them.
Sure. Okay. You remove it instead of add it. All right. Whatever. So you remove a counter instead of adding a counter.
Yeah.
But I think like a game designer that's on the other side of the screen, they're in the glass
watching
mirror
this
window.
happen,
Yeah.
going,
And they're
going,
going
oh,
to, yeah.
oh god, yeah,
Why'd you forget?
yeah.
Yeah.
Or, oh, I designed a dumb mechanic so that people could forget that they need to do it. No, really. I think Suspend is very, very cool. I do see why they have improved upon it and why I think they will continue to iterate on it. Very flavorful for the set that it came out in. It's a great throwback. Also, interesting enough, there's a Doctor Who commander deck that is based around Suspend, which is just the perfect lineup of stuff.
We just learned about this.
Yeah, I really do wish they had a Universes Within version of this kind of thing.
I was very happy to see that there is a newer precon that was made that uses the Suspend mechanic, and it like moves time counters around and stuff. Very
Which makes
cool.
perfect sense for Doctor Who.
Makes perfect sense. Super cool. Glad to see them throw that mechanic back in.
Somebody loves it, and that's all that matters.
Yes. Or they just love Doctor Who.
That's what I mean.
Oh,